welcome back to PH Hookup. I'm your host, Manny, and today we have Aaron Uzzell and aka the Warden. How are we?
Doing great. Doing great. Appreciate you having me on.
It's all good. I kind of want to ask about the name as well. Um, but before we get into all the good stuff, if you give us a little breakdown on who you are, what you do, and how you got to where you are. I use TeamBuildr. TeamBuildr is an all in one coaching software that reduces the amount of time that we spend on the back end of programming, on our Google Sheets, on our Excels, and allows me more freedom to do testing. With this podcast and episodes, I'm actually able to run some programs that I learned through different coaches coming on. To find out how you can use TeamBuildr and how it can apply to your own program, visit the link in the description and catch yourself a 30-day free trial.
Um, my name is Aaron Uzzell, and currently I'm the assistant AD, Director of Strength and Conditioning for Texas Tech University. Um, I started out back in '96, which kind of dates me a little bit. And, I had some friends that were working in the athletic department at Tech, and they're like, hey, why don't you come up here and try this out? And so I just started knocking on doors and just trying to get my way in. And, finally by about December, they let me in as a student assistant more than anything, and just started putting in hours, just volunteer hours as much as I could. And by about August of '97, they hired me full time. And I was here from '97 till about 2016, and kind of split off and opened up my own facility and trained a bunch of my professional guys, my NFL guys, combine guys, pro day guys, and they'd come back in the off season and train. And did that for a little bit, and then my kids were going to school here at Friendship, and they approached me about starting their whole strength and conditioning department. So I jumped on that, and we built out a really good program up there for about the last 5 years. And this past spring, I was kind of looking around a little bit, and this job popped up, and I thought it was a great opportunity. And one thing led to another, and here I am. So kind of short of the matter.
I mean, straight to the point. I like it. So, one quick question, and again, the more I go through this industry, the more I have to tip my hat off and appreciate what has came before and how the industry has progressed since '96. How have you sort of seen the landscape of the industry develop, and what are your thoughts on how it's going?
It's changed dramatically. I mean, when I got in, so the guy I got in with was Kelvin Clark, and he was part of the whole Nebraska, uh, strength, I guess, strength entity, so to speak, of Boyd Epley and Mike Arthur. And to see what we used to do back then in comparison to what it is now, it's like night and day. I mean, volume-wise, they said everything volumed at like about 2 miles, if you think about that. And so even if you progress down to your shorter stuff, everything equated out to 2 miles. And looking back on that, I'm like, it's completely changed so much. From what we did then, and the straight linear periodization that they had, and so much volume in certain areas and stuff like that. It's become much different than it was back in that time frame.
Mhm.
And I think more of it comes from like the assessment of the sport. I was kind of unique, and I was hired by Spike, and we ran that whole program. But then Coach Leach came in here in '99, 2000, and little did I know that what we were getting ready to do would change the whole complete landscape of college football. Unbeknownst to us. Back then it was like, you're trying to figure out, what was going on because of the amount of, volume and running that these players were doing, like in like our install for that particular offense. And so what we did, myself and Benny Wiley, I was like, hey, we need to figure out like what our volume is like in a given practice. And this is way before like, GPS wearables and stuff like that. And I always joke around with him and call it like, straight analog GPS. And so I sat there for a week straight, and I'd pick one guy on one particular day, and I would track all of his yardage for that particular practice for about 2 hours. And so then we'd add it up. And so then we had our DBs, and then we go to our safeties, and just right down the line. And then, within about 3 weeks or 4 weeks, we had a total volume for what particular days, whether it's like a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So it gave us an idea overall what was going on. And so then we started breaking everything down and, putting everything in place that we thought would be beneficial for, what was going on and for what the athlete had. So it was that whole time frame from 2000 to, about 2010 was, an interesting time because it just evolved so much and so fast. Um, with that particular offense and what happened. And now everybody's running some type of offense that's similar to that. Whether it's RPO or you're playing in space or something. But now, like with the wearables, it's made it so much easier, to figure stuff out and figure out all of our accelerations and everything else. But I mean, it's been pretty fascinating to watch over.
I was gonna say, how was it like Rhino all out longhand?
It's crazy.
No, the thing as well is like when you're collecting data, there's so much margin for error in the terms of like you can lose stuff if you're outside in the pitches, rain, water,
Mhm.
whatever else can jeopardize the results. So that's some effort if you're able to do that
So,
over.
we Excel spreadsheet. I put it all in Excel spreadsheet. We were just logging it, and
Okay.
we go back every once in a while and check it, and see where we're at. And, I mean, but it came down like in this field, and I'm sure a lot of other people agree. And I think that it's kind of been overlooked some by some of these younger coaches coming in, and maybe not so much, but it's the assessment of the sport more than anything, and
Mm,
what needs to be done for that particular sport. What are the demands more than anything? And that's kind of the way I looked at it, and that's the kind of way that Coach Wiley and I met about it. Like, hey, we really need to take a look at this because this is something different, and it's not normal to what we've been doing, so to speak.
mm. So with that, when you're going from collegiate private gyms to then high schools to then back to collegiate, how has that sort of evolved for you when you're identifying the sport, their needs, demands, and what each player is needing within those set parameters?
Well, I mean, it's when you went to the private sector, it's more of a one-on-one deal, and so the assessment's a little bit different. So if I had a guy that came back in, we can, hey, what have you been doing? Well, nicks and whatever. If there's some superficial stuff that was going on from the season, we can expand the time off or do some type of active recovery to bring them up. Going to the high school setting, it's you really got to hit reset more than anything because these kids are like you can go even beyond like their training age is zero, and some of them are even below zero, so to speak. But it's more of an education process than anything. I was fortunate enough that when I got there, admin was really involved, and I was able to bring some stuff to light. Like we had 25 racks, and we had 25 iPads, and we were straight VBT within that
Mm,
whole facility. And then I had 60 GPS wearables for our athletes. So we were pulling so much data at the high school level. It was kind of, to me, it was kind of unbelievable because it wasn't, it's not really that common. And so we were able to
mhm.
take the data and then show the coaches, hey, this is what's going on. And with football, I already had like a practice schedule that was conducive for college. And so we just redesigned it for a high school setting, and we redesigned our whole practice format for that week
Yeah.
based on all of our data. And, one thing led to another, and we started being pretty successful in that area.
So when you're talking about like the results that you've gotten, um, how have you managed to refine the data and make sure that you're getting like what you need out of each test and each um thing that you're testing with?
Well, it's you pull in so much data, then you kind of have an idea of where you want to be at and where we need to go. Um, and that's the thing. Like it's people look at data and they're like, well, you can't do this, you can't do that. But a lot of it comes down to knowing the athlete. And
Mm,
like it was at the time we pulled. I was the first high school that GPS data viz signed, and so we started crunching numbers and. Some of our parameters needed to be adjusted because I knew that we handle more volume just because of the offense we ran, something similar to what we did at Tech, and so we could adjust parameters in that aspect. But that just comes down to knowing what needs to be done and what the athletes can handle, and that comes down to knowing your athlete more than anything. And so you're able to adjust parameters, and then and know exactly where we need to be at. At the high school level, I had a jump mat, and so that's how we kind of measured like all of our power and all of our fatigue stuff from Monday to Monday, based on a baseline, which is very like very low, but it
Mm.
works more than anything. And so that was charted along with it. And I also had another company I used for all my quarterbacks, and we tracked every throw that they had in practice. And so I
Oh,
knew how many throws he had every practice, and I knew how many throws he had for the week leading up to the game. And so we were really big on monitoring, his arm strength during the week, um, max velocity and the torque on the elbow and stuff like that. I mean, so much stuff done at the high school level that it's like people just scratch their head, like, what are you doing? But we came out like we our injury rate was like through the ground. Like we were very minimal. If we had anything, it was superficial. It's the same thing when I was at Tech, or very minimal hamstring and hip flexor, no shoulder injuries, anything like that. But it's really knowing what's going on and understanding the demands of what we needed.
do you think having that collegiate setting prior to the high school and the private, that sort of led what was important for you test wise, assessment wise, essentially? So, like, you were testing your high schools by the sounds of it, like you would a collegiate program.
100%, 100%. I mean, like there was so much stuff. Like when I was here at Tech, we I've worked with some great guys, and like we pushed each other, you know, to question what we're doing. And that's one thing we always
Mm,
talked about. Like if you can't show validity in what you're doing, then you shouldn't be doing it. And if you can't explain it to your athlete and for them to understand it and why we're doing it, then you shouldn't be doing it. There was a time frame where, we I brought Catapult in at Tech in 13, but prior to that, we were spreadsheeting out and then tracking like monotony and a bunch of other stuff based on like a bunch of derivatives. It was a lot of it was waste, but a lot of it, was a learning process. Like, okay, this is something that we don't need to track. Once we got the GPS, overlaid a lot of the stuff that we were doing, and it kind of like in line to what we needed to do. I mean, it's it's a learning process more than anything. I mean, we failed so many times, but
mm.
that failure made me even better than what we, in the long run.
And I think that's something to be said as well. Is like when we're kind of going on social medias and all these different platforms where a certain standard is always expected, but then you get real coaches talking about like I've failed so much. Um, what's one sort of failure that you've had early on that you were like, that's now changed how you approach, how you program, how you deal with athletes, and
It was right off the beginning when we started with Coach Leach, and then we came to like, okay, this is our total volume, and this is how much volume they have in practice. Well, it's like, okay, well, we need to be aerobically sound, and you train aerobically, and you're running so much during that time frame, and then all of a sudden, it like after that season, it kind of clicked, like, oh, that wasn't a good idea, more than
mm,
anything, because what it comes down to is, we were learning real fast, and we developed a pretty good model, but it's all based on repeatability because once I saw the data and you're looking at our snap count was from snap to snap and right around about 19 seconds, and so from a lactic standpoint you need to be sound. From an anaerobic standpoint, we need to be sound. Come to find out, like average sprint time was 3.5 to 5 seconds, and so our max effort stuff need to be pushed more than anything else. And if you read and like you can be aerobically sound even if you're pushing somewhat of an aerobic component, so to speak, depending upon what your recovery time is. And so the undulation of our recovery time really helped us more than anything, and with the addition of like all of our max effort sprinting,
mm,
because it's repeatability, and people need to understand that. Like it's you're in an offense that within a series could be 5 to 6 plays, anywhere between a minute and a half, 2 minutes, but you're trying to line up as fast as you can within a 19-second period and run, and that receiver's running as fast as he can route wise, and then we're running up to the line as fast as we can. So,
yeah.
that was probably one of the biggest learning curves I had dealing with this particular offense. But the modalities that we put forth and the concepts we put in place really helped out quite a bit after that.
With the reversing of the collegiate program to a more high school standard, what were some of the things that you had to either slow down or you had to rethink because it might not fit that specific setting?
Um, I really didn't like. I kind of watered it down a little bit, but I didn't change much of anything. The way I looked
Nice.
at it is like we can still our volume may be a little bit different, sprint
Mm,
volume. But when I've got like what's interesting is so when I started in the high school, I went into all of our middle schools and I revamped all of our middle schools that fed into our high school, and so everybody spoke the same
wow.
language, everybody had the same program. So when they got to our freshman year, they understood what was going on. And so that was the biggest advantage right there. So you think about it, if I have a kid that was in middle school with me, that's 2 years right there. And then if he's in high school with me, that's six. That's a total of 6 years total. So by the time they're sophomores and juniors, they've already had 3 years of training with me. So changing it, it wasn't changed very much uh, because they were so in tuned in the weight room and what we were doing that you didn't have to really skew much of
Change
anything once
much.
we got
Yeah.
going.
I mean, that's a brilliant thing to do as well, is like looking at the long term right from the beginning when you can have some type of influence on them.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. Yeah. Because, like, if you can dictate their language early on, you can dictate how their high school then goes
Oh,
and then how their collegiate then goes.
yeah. All those coaches I had, they're speaking the same language, and that's what I was. And so there's no misterminology or anything like that. And doing clinics with those middle school coaches and all of our coaches on a continuous basis helps out quite a bit. And so the athlete knows exactly what's going on, and I don't have to reteach or there may be some reteaching with the group, but other than that, it's like you have a lot of older kids that are they're leading and teaching along with you, and it helped out tremendously.
No, so again, back to the conversation that we were having in the lobby. I had AJ Milton on a couple of days ago, and we were essentially talking about the process of refining how you're coaching, how you're teaching to fit their training age and their ability to understand what you're saying. So now, hearing that you actually went back to middle school and really made sure that, I mean, if their training age is 0, middle school might be like -2.
Minus five.
And you're having some sort of influence and some power on what they're getting taught. That's a really smart way of looking at it too.
And then like our summer stuff was structured just like a collegiate program. And so like on any given day, like I was literally I had probably about 400 to 500 kids a day, but it's
Wow.
structured. Our bigs were in the morning at 8, and then we'd roll our freshmen in at 9:30, and then my bigs would be over with my skill during the freshman group, and they're running like a scaled 30-minute practice. And then once they're done, then my skill would come over with me like at 11:15. It was structured out like it was pretty amazing how we ran it. I'll be honest with you. And then I had middle school kids at the end of the day, and we really slow that down and work on like with those kids like running technique because they're growing so much
Mhm.
in their body, and then we'd work on like just squat movements and stuff like that. And so that was kind of like the basis of us going into that fall for those middle school coaches, and the summer was vital. We had such a huge turnout over those years that made the program so much successful.
Mhm. No, I love that. Again, like I've been at the collegiate level, and I've also done multi sports and different levels of. So I know how like things can quickly change and be impacted from one thing to the other. You also have an Olympic style setting where you are just now. What's your main differences between jumping between your sports?
Um, looking at, I mean, really, like in my opinion, like strength is strength, and that's one thing I've told my coaches. Like, for that athlete, depending on what sport, it doesn't matter what sport, they have to be structurally sound strength wise for them to actually go in and do some of those particular movements that they may need to do, whether it's for some type of rotational stuff or some type of high end plyometric. I mean, the stronger you are, the byproduct of strength is power. And
Mm,
so if we're making that athlete stronger, with the addition of whatever plyometric work they may do from a volleyball setting or from a tennis setting that we have, you put your base strength, but then you're putting in like all your rotational stuff. Uh, towards the end, I think it's pretty sound, and that's one thing I
mm,
stress with all these coaches here is like, look, we need to make sure that these athletes are structurally sound from a strength perspective. But that doesn't mean like throwing a whole bunch of weight on their back and stuff like that because everybody's different. Um, but in order to do those particular movements that may be termed like sport specific, they still need to be strong. Like all of our rotational stuff and all of our med ball throws and stuff like that. I mean, it's to me, and I've always been like this. It's let's stay as basic as we can and add on a little bit at a
mm.
time as we go forward through the.
With the looking at individuality of each sport, how do you then create that main program, and then how does it trickle down to individual and specific needs?
Well, like we have a really good coach, and she does a great job, Katie Munger, with soccer, and she's pretty in tune with what they're doing, and it's a lot of eccentric work and a lot of lower body individuality with those girls, um, and she does a great job, and it's different than what we see with like our other sports, like with volleyball, where we're playing in a 10 by 10 cube, and we've got a girl who's jumping lateral, for something that's
Mm,
completely different than what soccer is, and that's kind of where the individuality comes out at. Um, but it's not like everybody's doing the same thing. It's an overview of strength with the addition of it goes back to the assessment of the particular sport. I mean, we're with volleyball, you're moving lateral along the net, and you're having to stop, and then all of a sudden, power position and get up, go for a block or a kill, or it's coming back and digging the ball or something to that effect. With soccer, it's you're at a standstill, and all of a sudden you got to react as fast as you can, then go into a cut where you're eccentrically loading that knee or that hip, which is one of the reasons why you see some of the eccentric movements at the beginning of the year with soccer, just so they can handle the load and the force on that particular body part.
mm. So you focus a lot on the deceleration and slowing down, or the elongating of that muscle at a faster rate.
Yeah, it's and I think that's we fall into a hole where we're not understanding that and not necessarily female athletes, but athletes in general, is that they're starting to move so much faster than they were years ago, and now you're looking at them and you're wondering why like some of these injuries are occurring, but it's sometimes they can't handle the eccentric load from
Mm,
that stop and you go into an acceleration. So you really have to look at it like, okay, I need to become stronger in this particular area, and
mm.
and that's one thing that's been assessed. Like I said, in the soccer and looked at in a volleyball setting and so forth. And it's the same thing with a lot of other sports, especially like basketball. There's so much start and stopping going on there.
I can't remember who exactly said it. I think it was in the podcast, but it's like having a Lamborghini but with Volvo brakes,
It's true.
where you're just like you've got this high powered machine and you're giving them like fucking shitty brakes.
You're trying to stop, you're not stopping. Or anything.
Or you are just in a completely fucking wrong way. So going back to one of the questions I had at the beginning, the warden, how did that come about and how did that stick?
um, that was so when I first started, I was working with men's basketball, and they're such a fun group to work with. And you had like Darvin Ham, who's he was recently the head coach for the Lakers, and you had Corey Carr, and we had these two guys, Stan Bonowitz and Brock Barnes. And they're great athletes, but it wasn't their time to play. And so when we come in to lift, they just kind of hang out. So I'd break their balls like, hey, we're working out, and so we'd work out. And they're like, man, this is terrible. it's like you're like the warden and blah blah this and that, and it just kind of took off from there. And before I know it, it's like the whole entire department was calling me that, and I was like, all right, that's like 1997.
And how have you lived by it? No, that's I'm always fascinated with some of the nicknames that people get. Again, mine's is Manny because it's shorter from Emmanuel,
Hmm.
and in Scotland people can't pronounce my name the Portuguese way, so I'm just like, just call me Manny. It's fine. With the specifics of Texas Tech, what are some of the things that you're now implementing and looking forward to seeing how they pan out?
um, we're a lot of testing. I mean, so to speak, like we have a working relationship with Bald and all of our force plate stuff. We run about 4 different force plates, and we just ordered some more Nord boards. So, excuse me, we'll run like 3 different Nord boards, and all of our testing data. I think it comes down to us making sure everybody's on the same page. That's my biggest thing, and that we're testing correctly and that we're structured correctly. And like I said, I mean, there's some great coaches here, and they're doing some great things across the board from football all the way over to basketball. And everybody has the same goal, and that's to
Mm.
be successful and win. But it takes everybody working together and coming together. The end, so to speak, and but that's kind of what the approach I've taken. Kind of clean some stuff up in that area, and reassess all of our testing.
With Vald and Nord boards, a lot of what people look at is asymmetries and
Hmm.
how what's your what's your level of comfort percentage wise with asymmetries for your athletes?
Uh, it varies. It's I've got a guy that we have like a guy that he's kind of like our sports scientist, and he's hashing all the data right now to get to me so he can kind of start overviewing it. I mean, I've been here for like you know 5 weeks, 6 weeks, and we tested like I bet you we tested probably 300 athletes, and that's just in the summer, and we don't have everybody here, and so like it's for me, it's like a process that we have to look at currently. We're getting all the asymmetries, and especially all the people that we've had hurt, to make sure that those percentages are equated equal to our good leg. Well, I mean, I know that's common sense, but that's the overall goal.
Mm.
To me, that the Nord board and that aspect of it has been very useful because that kind of gives you a lot of information. But then again, like all your baselines for your hamstring stuff, and then testing it periodically, which football did, throughout the season, and we were doing that with or throughout the summer, and then we're doing the same thing with basketball currently, just to see kind of where from fatigue status, percentage wise, drop off wise, where we're at, if there is any. Um, right now, that part of it, I'll be honest with you, is it's a learning experience having to go through that many athletes right now.
Yeah. What are you what's your biggest pain point right now with all
With where I'm
with
at right now.
testing? Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. It's I'm really curious to see like the overlay with all of our GPS stuff and uh, our Nordboard stuff in comparison to our high speed, our top speed guys, uh,
Mm.
with power to body weight and their Nordboard test, and then their max effort speed, and see what the comparison is. And what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
if there's so much strength within the posterior chain, and they're running X amount of speed, like is there any correlation to that, or can we pull anything out of that in comparison, like the power to weight ratio? That's kind of like nerdy stuff, but it's just stuff that I kind of wonder, like is there a connection there? Like if we get a guy that comes in and he's X amount of percentage on the Nord board, but does that mean that he's going to be able to, does that mean we're going to be able to get him up to like 21 or 22 miles an hour? You see what I'm
Mm.
saying? Like
Yeah, yeah.
it's stuff like that we can look
I
at
think
over the next 2 years.
with these tests as well, there's so much individuality that goes into it. That you kind of like, is that just a one off or is that spread across the whole?
That I want to see it across the whole deal, because I think that gives you a huge insight, and that's just one area, and it's just my curiosity more than anything.
So how much emphasis are you putting on that posterior chain, and what are your what are you trying to elicit in the then test for speed, the nord boards and all that?
Well, I mean, anytime I've dealt with speed, like it's like what we talked about, like your max effort stuff. And I've always been on the basis of like when we start off, when I did, and I'm not currently like dealing with football. We have a guy who's the head guy over there, and he does a great job. But I'm real big on total volume, minimal wise on any max effort stuff. Starting off is about 250 yards. And so, speed comes down to like in my opinion, it's more of a neural concept. And what I mean by that is that you're trying to get that athlete to run as fast as possible, but more than anything, he's trying to neurally run and keep up with like that actin and myosin that's moving back and forth. That's where like nothing, like if he runs at
So
a
you're
high
talking the
speed, and
pathway.
yeah, it's like if you're not running as fast as you possibly can in training, um, how are you going to do that in a game? Like
Mm,
it can't be the exact opposite because if you can't, if it's the exact opposite, then there's a misfire, and that's when you get like that strain or whatever it is, where one filament's going one way and the other filament's going the other way. So it's not coordinated correctly, and I think that's where speed comes from. Is it's a repeatability, one max effort wise, but then there's a max recovery time in between that process. So you're teaching the body to fire, coordinate correctly from a neural
mm,
concept to run at a max effort. And so, like, even if you get a guy that's like 20 and a half miles an hour, and then all of a sudden, like in a game, he PRs like a 21-2, well, you really need to watch that guy. And the reason why, because he's just neurally ran as fast as he possibly can and PR'd. And so, he may be fried for a couple of days after that, after the game. So your modality and your training needs to really watch that guy and make sure that we're bringing him back up correctly.
mm.
So
So it's looking at heat zones as well. So like if that guy has again expressed maximal effort, you're kind of padding him or her for the next week or so.
oh yeah, to me that's very important. Like if you don't understand that, then like you're putting yourself in a bind or you're digging that kid a hole, and you're really pushing that cumulative fatigue factor pretty far with that particular person. You know as well as I do that the body reacts a little bit differently. So if it gets to the point where there's too much fatigue, and that's when you start seeing injuries pop up.
Mm,
Then you're like, well, what? Now you're like a week and a half behind now because you got to pull that person down and bring them back up from an injury standpoint. But
yeah.
speed is neural coordination in my opinion, and then that's like repeatability. The way it's acceleration, and you're increasing your acceleration distance over and over. Where you may start like I start with tens just as a warm up, and I'm going 15s and 20s. We're not at full stride at 20 yards, so to speak, but you're still working that acceleration factor for X amount of time over X amount of yardage. And then you eventually go into like all your durational speed, which is you're going faster, past 30 to 40 yards, or maybe upwards of 50 yards, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. Um, but that's just the way I look at it.
Mm,
I've kept it where like it's an easy build for the first 3 weeks. It's just straight linear, and then we move into like all of our curved running, distance wise and stuff like that. I know that we are coordinated enough to run very fast, but now we can add in the lean and so forth
mm.
uh,
Different angles.
that you're going to see like on the field. And so that's kind of I've always done it like that, and I've had really good success doing it that way.
Yeah. What was the biggest learning point in your career that you elicited a certain response that you were like, "Fuck yeah, that's what I like."
Uh, I don't know. I really I got really focused in on like speed work. I'll be honest with you.
Mm,
That really like drove me more than anything because people would be like, "Man, I got hamstring issue, I got hip flexor issue." I'm like, "Well, what are you doing? Like, what have you done the last 2 to 3 weeks?" And then we'd hash through everything that's going on. And, a lot of it was, the distance was too much. The volume was fine, but we needed to adjust the distance going forward. And it was something that I really started looking into and talking to a lot of people about. And, that thing drove me quite a bit, and it's helped me develop what I've done over the last 8 years.
Obviously, there's quite a lot. I might be a little bit controversial here just now. There's a lot of speed gurus and speed. What's your thoughts and takes on them?
I don't know if I want to say anything about that.
Fair play, fair play. You don't have to. You don't have to.
Well, I mean,
Um,
this is the thing. I mean, Buddy Ryan said it best. He goes, "If you're," and I love that guy. I've never met him, but I'd love to meet that guy. He said, "If you basically he said if you still think that the speed ladder builds speed, then you're a dumbass strength coach." You know what I'm saying? Like it's the speed ladders are played out. There's a good they're a good tool for certain aspects. It's like foot placement and stuff like that.
I think so. Just now, I've been speaking a lot about like context and why context is important for essentially everything that we do, right? Because if you don't know the context on how that athlete is coming in, you're probably not going to give him what he needs or she needs.
All right.
Um, and I think again, I love working speed, but I can't just hang my hats on everything that I see on Instagram or what's popular
No.
right now. Because like if I just so say like we've got athletes and I just focus on speed with them for like the preseason, which is like usually a month or two, right? They're going to get into that season. Yes, they're going to be fast and they might be able to decelerate quickly enough. But like as soon as contact hits, they're fucked. I need some size. I need some strength in there. I need some power in there to be able to continuously do. And again, I think a lot of the mark is missed on not so much the conditioning piece, but the how it all comes together, right? So
Mhm.
strength feeds into power, like you said before. Power feeds into speed. But if you can't do that for the 90 or the hour and a half, or in American football, 50 hours for a game,
Mhm.
like all those qualities are great, but you're not going to be able to do them for much longer.
You're gonna be good for like one or two series. That's why you see teams, and I'm not talking bad about anybody. But you see teams that are real good in the first quarter, and you see that dip in the
Mm-hmm.
second quarter, and this kind of goes down, and they're just trying to get into halftime. They come out of halftime, and then third quarter is like half the third quarter is good, and then it's just downhill after that. And,
That's
and that's
exactly
a
what I'm talking
prime
about.
indicator. Yeah, it's a prime indicator. What's going on?
So I'll go a step further, and now I when I was at UW, I was with the American football team, and they were conditioned. Tell they were conditioned. I was 22 and 23. They won uh states, not states, conference 2 years in a row, and that's the year that they went up to nationals and
Mm-hmm.
lost. So like I know what the conditioning was like, and then it makes sense. But like if we're talking about like rugby or soccer, like that's 90 minutes nonstop,
Yeah,
like nonstop.
the
And
data for soccer is completely different.
mhm. Oh, so I can't remember who I was talking to, but it was like a 13 to 14K per game. Like they were averaging.
Mm-hmm.
And like conditioning people for that level of intensities, and like they were pushing like an attackive uh plan. So like it was attack, 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 attack. So like they never got to like walk
They,
back. It was like
they,
as soon as you
that's when that coach needs to go to low block for about 20 minutes to get everybody to recover.
um so it's yeah, conditioning, and you also have to analyze the whole piece. Like you need to know that the processes go together. They're not individual. They're a combination of things that make you a better athlete.
Oh, 100%. Like I've got so much data from soccer, and it's like it undulates so much in a game, so much. And
Hmm.
like our holding center mid, would like like what you're saying, they kick 6, 7 miles in one game, and like if you break it down, like it's a lot of it's slow speed, but then all of a sudden they've got to burst,
Mm,
for about 20 yards as fast as they possibly can and decelerate. And but it's an interesting, to me. I found it very interesting because
mm,
it's a it's not necessarily a problem, but it's something like, okay, I want to solve this, and I want to put this athlete in a very good position to where they can be sitting and then all of a sudden accelerate, recover, get back, and then go again. And it's ideal what you're saying. Like it's completely different. trying to
mm.
trying to get those individuals ready to go.
I'm not saying one's harder than the other because they're both brutal. Like,
Mhm.
yes, you've got less constant intensity, but the bouts of intensity that you do have in an American football game, it's like apples and oranges. You can't compare them. It's fucking fruit.
So you're 100% correct.
I think. Have you ever looked at Moxie? Do you know what Moxie is?
What the
It's like
is
a
it?
little device that measures the oxygen.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
Um, so I did a lot of work with them at university, and I was working with professional combat athletes at the time, and we were running studies on them and how you can increase the recovery from that. And again, we did speed sprints. It was, what was it? It was, I think it was like 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, something like that.
It's like
It
a
was like short,
Tabata,
sweet,
Tabata intervals.
and like from week one to like the last week of the study, like you could see a massive improvement in
Hmm.
the ability of oxygen to get back into that muscle quicker. Like I think the way it worked, like you sprint, like so this is your baseline. As soon as you started sprinting, it would tank like
Hmm.
quick, and then your ability to get to that 0% was what determined like how fatigued that bout is.
Hmm.
And then what we were observing is like that peak back up, whether it was like this or like straight up. And you could see like they would start like this, and then by the end they were like more peak like.
Yeah. What I mean, what to me that's so. What I did, like, because I train like with football, I train high low,
Mm,
and so we do high low one year. I was running high low one year, and then we were having some the evaluation of the year. So every year I would evaluate, and everybody should. And so like it's evaluation of a week, evaluation of a month, evaluation of the season, whatever. And I didn't feel like we were recovering fast enough, and so I went high low, medium, low high. And so on that medium
mm,
day, I'd force them go lactic because I didn't think they were flushing very well. And so that's kind of what you're talking about. And so it was an undulation of the recovery time. So we'd have like short sprint intervals, slight recovery time, and then have them sprint again. But it's like it goes back to like you get caught up in all these books that says, well,
mm-hmm,
again, if you're anaerobic sound and aerobic sound, you should be able to flush lactic really good. But that's not necessarily true because the athlete hasn't been put in that position, doesn't know how it feels. And
mm,
so that was my whole goal is to get that athlete to see how it feels, and then the body starts to adapt to flush that lactic, and now they can, in a high intense situation like what you're talking about, like if we're running like what they call NASCAR, and hurry up, and it's like every 15, 18 seconds, bam, 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 bam. Well, now they're flushing, and they understand the body understands how to flush that lactic out, and that's I put him in that situation for over like a 5 week period prior to going into camp. It helped out quite a bit because you know how it is. Everybody gets into camp and they're all those coaches are amped because they haven't seen their players, all summer. And then they start yelling at them, "Run faster!" And like, you know, it's like 5 seconds. Like, 5 seconds to recover to go again. So I was like, well, we need to let's see if we can fix this. And sure enough, man, it worked. It worked quite a bit.
I think as well, like so I've been messing around with heart rate zones and like how they can impact the recovery. So what I've been doing recently is I'll do like a 4 exercise round. So it'll be like assault bike, some form of uh, Olympic derivative, a
Hmm.
cowbell movement, and some type of jumping movement. I'm just like really trying to fatigue as much as I possibly can. And then I check my heart rate, and as soon
Probably
as
like
it gets
160 or 170 up there.
and the rest, I'll tell you a funny story afterwards. But then as soon as it dips to that blue zone, like
Hmm.
that zone two, I go again. As soon as it gets, so I do it all again. As soon as it dips to that two, back in, and again, the results I've seen on myself are great. But now I'm wanting to test on more athletes, see how the recovery systems
Hmm.
can pick up a little bit more.
We did that with. So one of my main things that I do with in football, we do sled repeats.
Love
So
them.
like with our skill, I'd work up to 30 yards, but
Damn.
the weight is not like very heavy, and that's a key right there because if you watch, and we start off with like 20 yards, we go 25 yards, and this is over a 6 week frame, and then we'd end with 30 yards, but you have to watch their turnover. So if their turnover is not proper, then we know one, it's either the workout's done, or two, it's too much weight.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the end of the year, one summer, we heart rate strapped everybody. And so we were hitting 30 yards max effort. And I had the tablet and we were watching, and we had guys that would peak at like at 168. And then we about a 30-second, maybe 35-second recovery, they're already down to like 140. So they drop like 20
Mm-hmm.
beats within that time, which is, if you know, like that right there tells you that you're pretty aerobically sound because your
Mm-hmm.
recovery is so much faster. Um, it was pretty amazing that we got to that point. I mean, we kind of felt like, okay, we know we're recovering fast, but we weren't for sure, and so we had some heart rate monitors like, hey, let's check it out. And sure enough, we were dropping like 20, 30 beats on some of these guys.
Which is major,
Oh,
especially like when you get into those later quarters and
mm-hmm,
like the tightness of competition.
mm-hmm,
Yeah. So when I was working at a public gym, I'm not going to mention their name because I'll get into it at the end. I was doing I think I would do like sometimes 2 to 3 spin classes a day, just like teaching them. So like intensity on load for me was very high,
mm-hmm.
but um, I once did a challenge with myself because you can't do this with Gen Pop. But I tested out how what's the highest I can get up to, like just pure effort. And I will show you this because I actually do have proof. Um, I got to 201 beats.
I think I've topped like at 171. That was about it.
Let me see if I can find it. But it was like, and again, I was blowing out my arsehole at that point. Like there was just nothing else I could possibly give. I'll try and find it. But like, so at that time, I was experiencing like I was tapping into that dark side of training, like the
Hmm.
dark zone, the deep end. And I mean, I feel like athletes should experience it and have to experience it because like it really drives again, like what we are saying, like that third to fourth quarter, the last 10 minutes when everything starts to suck. You need to trust yourself that you can go through it.
Yeah, trust the suck.
I'm really trying to find this. Wait, actually, I lied.
207.
207.
I've never hit anywhere close to that. Ever.
Again, I didn't enjoy doing it. Like it wasn't pleasant whatsoever.
I feel like your heart's going to explode when you get that.
Literally, literally. I like experimenting with programs and seeing like different angles and different ways you can do it. How's that sort of played a part and role into your programming? Like, just like reading something or finding something out, experimenting it on yourself, and then implementing it to the program.
Uh, no, that's kind of to me, like when I started out, it's kind of a written rule. Like
Mm,
you got to try it out. So I know how it feels for the athlete. To me, it makes it better to coach that athlete if you understand the concept of what you're trying to do. All your running, all your sprinting, stuff like that, sleds. I've done everything I have my athletes to do. I've done. I think I'm a firm believer in that. If I don't know, then I'll call somebody and they'll tell me. Then I'll get it out and I'll do it myself. But I think that's a huge asset. It may suck,
mm.
but but at least you understand and know how that person's feeling, and you can kind of coach them through that situation. And I think that's a huge advantage.
Mm. I did this stint where I was interning with the one of the founders for the UKSEA, and his name's Gil Stevenson, and he has this conditioning drill where it's a clean, it's a full clean. You do it as many times as you can. You can either go 30 seconds, 45, or minute, depending on how aerobically fit you are. So the way it works is you've got 3 rounds. So you're obviously going to hit the red zone the whole time. You're strapped up with a heart rate monitor so you can see exactly where you've peaked at each round. If it keeps climbing by the third round, if it doesn't like plateau because you can't physically go any higher, you
Hmm.
do a fourth set. I've messed around with that a bit as well. That is fucked.
If you laid out there.
It's experimenting these little things that you kind of like know how to push yourself and others. I feel like.
Yes, yes. It's kind of a. There's just some crazy people in our field. I mean, you kind of wonder, you ask yourself, like, why am I doing that? I mean, some of the
Um,
stuff I've done.
exactly, and that. But I think like once you do these things and you've tried them, you can at least talk about them and
Yeah.
like see what happens. Like,
Like we'd run with all of our, like, when I was here with Leach and Benny and I would run with every one of our groups.
yeah,
And we ran, like, if we had 3 groups that day, like I ran every group.
mm,
So like it was, they can't say anything because you got this old dude that's like beating you on every rep,
hmm
and nobody's bending over and nobody's complaining. But that was would I do that again now? I don't know. I think about that.
I mean, I feel like at that point you've got people that need to do it for you.
But I mean, if I had to, I would. But Benny and I, we'd laugh about it. Like, dang, we ran X amount. I think one day we ended up with like, I don't know, it was like close to 150s. It was just some crazy stuff.
Fuck.
Through 3 groups, everybody kept messing up. We'd run again. I was like,
Oh,
after every day, like I'd go sit in the cold tub for about X amount of time just to kind of recover before I went home.
fair, fair. I did I was speaking at a conference in Italy. I did it last year and this year, and one of the things that I go through is like conditioning and how to simplify the process for your athlete so he doesn't have to think as much. So we obviously got them to do the drills, and
Hmm.
like watching strength coaches sometimes run can be
That's the
painful.
funniest thing ever.
But they did it. They did it. A lot of them were soccer athletes. By the way, I hate the fact that I'm saying soccer. Um, but like, I would run with them, and like one of them at the end was like, "Why did you do that?" I was like, "I mean, you kind of have to know that I can do it too, and not just that."
Yeah,
It's like I pushed you through the end. Like that's what a coach should be able to do. Is like
yeah.
motivate you to the point that, oh fuck, coach is running next to me. I have to keep going.
I better not stop. It's really
Um,
it's a mind game more than anything.
hundred
It's a
percent.
huge mind game. They don't understand it's more mental than it is physical. Because
Yeah,
I know like I'd be struggling, but that young guy
you
next to
can't
you,
you can't show it.
that young guy next to you is going, oh dang, that guy's he's staying right there with me.
It's like that.
Yeah.
What's one piece of advice that you would give new coaches or coaches coming into this industry?
Ask as many questions you can. Always ask why. Ask
Mm,
why. That's the biggest thing, man. I even to this day, I mean, I ask questions. If I don't know, like I'm that person that calls people up and say, hey, why are you implementing this? How are you implementing this? Um, don't be that person that just takes the workout and just does whatever that coach asks. And that's one thing that I've told like all of our student assistants and stuff like that. Like, do not, if you have a question, you need to ask the question. We're
mm,
here to develop you. You just can't regurgitate, what that particular strength coach is doing or whatever it may be. You need to ask questions and ask why we're doing it so you understand the concept of what we're doing.
I think as well, like being curious expands a lot more than just taking it. Like,
Hmm.
because then, like, so I don't know if you think this way as well, but like, if I have three coaches that are really good at X aspect of this industry, they might be doing like the exact same thing, but they'll explain it three different ways. And like those three different ways, you can interpret and take what you can from them, either implement it the same way or in a way that's unique to your program. And I think that's where I'm guessing you're coming from is like ask the whys because like you can get so much more than just the basics of it.
No, I always I want to know. I mean, as part of learning, like, why are you doing that? Like, what's your overall goal? Um, if you can't ask a question, then you're not really going to be so much successful in this field. I'll be honest with you, because there's so much variation and so much change that's happened. Just year to year more than anything.
Mm.
Um, it's you got to ask questions, 100%.
What was your biggest learning piece this year?
This year, whew, I don't know. The year's not over with yet. That's the thing.
That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. I'll accept that.
I mean, there's a lot. I mean, I'm learning every day. To be honest with you, I was this past spring. I'm in high school, and now I'm sitting here, instructing like a bunch of our coaches and the direction we need to go, and which is, I love it. I'm not. I feel like I haven't skipped a beat, and we're moving forward. And I'm excited about the fall and about what we've got going on. It's fun. It's fun. I enjoy it.
I appreciate you for coming on today and giving us some wisdom.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'll come back anytime.
Perfect. Appreciate you. Peace.